Ooh. This is the first floor room where Thomas was taught. Still a study and still a beautiful room with an atmosphere that I'm sure that Thomas would have recognised and enjoyed. One of the extraordinary things about Thomas Bewick is that he has really wise things to say about almost everything, and sometimes he can sound really modern. He despised corporal punishment, for example, because he felt that it just didn't work. He describes it as a senseless system of severity, and he says that conduct like this sours the minds of some boys and renders others stupid, and makes all more or less disgusted with learning. Isn't that splendid? And it's worth remembering that he wrote that in 1827, 10 years before Dickens satirised educational cruelty at Dotheboys Hall in Nicholas Nickleby. Mind you, you can understand why people got cross with him, because there's no doubt that he was a naughty little boy. St Mary's Church is just over the road from the vicarage, and on one occasion Mr Gregson punished him for some offence by locking him in the church at night on his own. He said he was terrified of ghosts and bogles, but he got used to it, and when the vicar came to get him, he climbed up one of the church pillars, and he was sitting on top of the capital, where he couldn't be seen. Terrified the vicar instead. Another of his naughtinesses that I haven't mentioned so far is that he used to draw on everything. He covered the church porch and the gravestones outside with chalk drawings, and inside the church he used to scratch on the back of the pews with a pin when he was supposed to be praying. So eventually the family followed the line of least resistance, and when he was 14 his godmother recommended him to the Bealby brothers, famous engravers of Newcastle. And so he was sent off to become an apprentice engraver with Ralph Bealby. And there he stayed for the next 7 years, learning the trade and learning to become a Geordie. Bewick's life in Newcastle as an apprentice and later as a partner of Ralph Bealby, and later still running his own business, is full of interest, and he gives us a vivid picture of Newcastle life and of his responses to it. The old parts of the town where he lived have of course changed out of all recognition, but the old streets are still there and some of the buildings. Bewick's print shop was in this corner of the cathedral churchyard, where he spent a lot of his time talking to an extraordinary range of interesting and well-educated friends. This was his pub. He used to pop in here after a hard day's work at Bealby's print shop. "I'll have a pint, please." But he never drank. In fact, he was quite quaint about drink. He was 23 before he ordered his first pint, and for a long time he seems to have lived mainly on milk. I think that was because drunkenness shocked him. So did prostitution. He hated prostitution, and interestingly he always blamed men for it. He talks about the way that base men treat women as social inferiors, to be used like brutes and tyrannised as their slaves. There were loads of issues like this that he talks about with a passion sitting here in the pub with his mates. He had a detestation of war, for example. He talks about the cruelty and the horror of it and the superlative wickedness of its authors. It wasn't so much that he was a radical or a revolutionary. He just loved liberty and had a great feeling for the rights of man. He called America the wisest and greatest republic the world ever saw. And in France he blamed the aristocracy because instead of being the natural guardians of the nation, they were chiefly known as its oppressors. He didn't think much of the English aristocracy either, and he accused them of shirking their responsibility towards the poor and ignoring their history by allowing their ancient halls to slide away into nothingness and to sink into oblivion. Thomas was much more likely to admire the dignity of the unnoticed poor, the poor cottagers with their honest and independent character who lived on the common beside Cherryburn.